Good afternoon, YouTube. Welcome to Fairy Face Fail Productions. So today we're going to be talking about the Arctic Leopard EX800. So we'll be talking about the brand, we'll be talking about the bike, we'll be talking about all the things that I like about it and all the things that we've kind of experienced with this whole Arctic Leopard thing. So we'll kind of get to it. So first things first, let's talk about Arctic Leopard. Arctic Leopard is obviously a Chinese brand being imported by Pinned Electric here in the United States. And so far, the bikes themselves have been pretty phenomenal. They're not without their flaws. They're not without their quirks because, yeah, I mean, some things are just going to be that way. Electric stuff is just different to begin with. Plus, overall, though, the quality, I think, is quite good. We've had very good luck with the Arctic Leopards. I raced the EX800 at the Tennessee Knockout race, so had a lot of fun. Right now I'm sitting at a race where Vanessa is racing the Arctic Leopard EX800 down at Texas Creek here in Colorado. So we're having a lot of fun with the Arctic Leopards and the electrics in general, and this is a really sweet, lightweight, fun, capable bike, especially for the new MSRP that they just released. So I believe the new MSRP for this bike is $8,000 out the door, or $8,000 MSRP is going to be what they're going for right now for the EX800. That's a pretty sweet deal for a bike that's capable of over 50 miles range pretty comfortably with most riders. So that's awesome. I mean, that's a really sweet deal, especially when you compare it to like upgrading an Ultra B or something like that. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about that. I'm a little peeved with Arctic Leopard, but we'll kind of talk about the U.S. importer here in a little bit. That's less important to how good the bike actually is. Full disclosure, I am a dealer in Monument, Colorado with A&M Moto Toys. I'm the owner, so we do sell Arctic Leopard. We do our best not to be biased. It doesn't do us anything because electric sales are not like the power sports of old. So the way that we sell things is based on popularity and the truth of these bikes. It behooves us to carry bikes that are not only popular but are reliable for their customers, and so we try to be pretty upfront with everything having to do with these bikes. Alright, first we'll look at some specifications for the EX800. So max power output is 25 kilowatts, which is absolutely insane on a 180 pound bike. The battery is a 74 volts, 75 amp hour battery, although I believe the actual stack from eWatt on the battery itself is actually 65 or 76. So yeah, I don't know, it's right around there. It's a little bit more than that, I think, so that's why the range is so good on this bike. Has a 2118 wheel set on it, which I absolutely love. More and more bikes need to start doing that because I hate the 19-inch wheel thing. And then other specifications, let's see, Far Driver app controlled, so you can adjust pretty much everything through Far Driver in the app. I haven't touched much of it. Pretty happy with the modes that are on it, except for the regen settings. There is a new regen switch on the newer bikes, and then there's some more settings in the app for controlling that better. I think that was something that was poorly done, was how the regen was set up from the factory was poo. But the good news is you can pretty much just turn it off, and most people will want to ride that way anyway. So that's pretty good. Comes with moto style brakes and brake lines, which I very much like for the most part. We've had to bleed pretty much every bike that's come in. They don't come very well from the factory. After getting them bled and set up properly, the brakes are decent. Now I will say that I think a lot of riders are, especially a little bit more into the intermediate / novice, are going to want either better brake pads to the rear or a little bit more powerful rear brake. That's one of my criticisms for the bike, is that the rear brake could definitely be better. I want to see something a little bit more powerful back there. I've overheated the rear. I know some of our customers have too, so that's another hey, you got to learn about these bikes, but you're also riding this bike pretty fast comparative. Suspension wise, she has a pretty moto-ish style suspension. So I've mostly experienced the Arctic Leopard with the original style rear shock, which was harsh. The new one that's like canted off to the side so the rear wheel doesn't hit it, that was a problem, but I'm not going to touch it since it's been fixed. But Arctic Leopard did address the issue of the rear shock and then came out with a new one very quickly. That's really cool. So the rear shock is pretty compliant. The new one, I like it. It seems to be pretty well dampened. Where it sits makes it kind of hard to adjust once it's in the chassis, so that's a downside, but overall I like the rear. Now the front forks are not as compliant. A lot of people have complained about the forks. I've got them to where I think I like more or less where it is. They're stiff. They feel a little oversprung and underdampened to me. There's work to be done. I hope that they improve the forks, but they're very usable. And compared to other E-motos, like let's just say a Sur-Ron Ultra B, it blows those forks out of the water. And I'm not I don't dislike KKE forks, and I don't even think the Ultra B has a bad suspension. But this one is just far more compliant, riding over hard stuff fast. So those are kind of the main specifications for the bike. So we'll kind of go on to riding it. What is it like riding the bike? Well, this chassis was kind of derived from a trial style bike. So the front handlebars do sit a little low comparative, and some people don't like that. I have 3-inch risers on ours. That actually feels like probably too much for me, although with Vanessa riding it, it's probably about right for her, so we leave them on. But yeah, you can get risers to the point where it's not a big deal about any of the characteristics to the front. It actually feels really good. It's a very lightweight, slim frame. The bike weighs 180 pounds, so that's another really great number for a bike with these kinds of capabilities. In fact, I never use Mode 3. 25 kilowatts is freaking batshit crazy on this thing. I don't touch Mode 3. Mode 2, I'm trying to remember. I think she's around 18 kilowatts, I think, in Mode 2. Is what I have it set to. That's about the most I'll ever run on this bike, and I rarely if ever touch throttle. But picking up the front wheel over obstacles, hopping it up stuff, no problem. This is such a capable bike. I ride so much quicker on this compared to my 2-strokes. Yeah, and that's really kind of a thing. It's a fun bike. Okay, so the next thing I'll kind of touch on is let's just say the ease of taking the bike apart and stuff. This is not a hot swappable battery bike. I mean, obviously, once you get into these giant batteries, they're just not easy to remove. The battery is like the majority of the weight, I feel like, of the bike. But yeah, this one is definitely not easy to take. Even taking the seat off requires tools. Taking the whole rear part of the chassis apart is kind of a huge pain in the butt. In fact, I think it needs to be refined to where everything comes on, like the rear subframe and everything bolts on a lot more linearly, I guess, comparative to now. You kind of have to get it all in the right order with the plastics and the subframe, and it's actually a pain in the butt. We started out building these from pretty much the ground up. So yeah, taking it apart and putting it together is not a pleasant experience. I hope that they can improve that. Now the battery is held down by a bolted down lock nutted bar that holds the battery onto the frame, which is awesome. There's no battery rattle, there's no nothing. They are secure in there for sure. I do like that part, but yeah, there is no easily taking the battery out. That is probably, if you were proficient at this, maybe half an hour to get it apart, get the battery out of there, and get another one in there. So keep that in mind. That's not going to be a thing that you're doing probably often on this bike. Although with 50 plus miles of range, I don't know why you would necessarily need to do that. But it's a consideration. So you've got kind of that going there. Yeah, another thing that's a little bit quirky about the Arctic Leopard is the battery binding. You can set it to read voltage, but through the display on the dash on the handlebars, you can set it to, of course, read wirelessly, which I would say 90% of the time works really well. Sometimes it doesn't quite pick up the battery. For us in the shop, I think the issue is that we have multiple in there, and sometimes it'll like read the wrong battery and stuff like that. But it does allow you to see full cell layouts, so you can use another battery app to fully track the battery, which is cool. But otherwise, yeah, it's pretty accurate on its reading for battery. You know, that's kind of a cool. You get a lot more data from the wireless feed from the battery for sure. So I'll talk another point I'll touch is, who is the EX800 really for? I would say pretty much anybody. Everybody that I've had on it has really liked it. They've really been impressed with the power of the bike, the size of the bike. If you're a really big dude, it could feel too small, I suppose. But, I'm a pretty average sized 5'8", 190 pounds. So that, the bike feels phenomenal riding it. The seat height's a little bit lower, but it's not really that low. So everything about that is a pretty sweet setup. Anybody can get on it. It's been very popular with some of our female riders that have purchased them because they are lighter, they are a little bit smaller. But man, what makes this bike so much fun in single tracks and single track and tight wood stuff is that it's just so compliant over everything. You know, if you drop it, it's so easy to get back up. If you're throwing it around in really tight stuff, you're not fighting the mass and the momentum of the bike. It's just such an easy bike to ride. And out of all the e-motos that we've had, to including the big brother, the EX880, the 800 has been my favorite. It really is a pretty phenomenal platform that I hope continues to be developed and grown. They've really kind of hit a home run for me, and it's sad that they haven't gotten as much attention as it really truthfully deserves. A stock EX800 did take a podium spot at Tennessee Knockout in the electric class, so that's pretty good. And while I did race out there, I'm not a race guy. I went out to have fun on it. Racing at Tennessee, I learned the bike very quickly. I got confident on it very, very fast. And it was just a great experience as far as all things. Putting the suspension with the motor, the weight and balance of the chassis. I really liked the Arctic Leopard, and it really kind of lent itself to how well I think it's actually built. Okay, so if you made it this far, you're probably looking for the downsides of the EX800. So let's talk about some downsides. I already kind of touched on the rear brake a little bit. It's not a deal breaker. Honestly, I think most riders are going to get over that pretty quickly. The brake can definitely be managed with cruising down the hills. You can mess with the regen settings to help out the rear. There's options for that. But the biggest, I think, flaw with Arctic Leopard in the United States right now is actually the distributor. And you know what? I don't hate, I'm a dealer. I work with Pinned Electric. This is what it is. I'm going to be honest, because this is our frustration. This is our customers' frustration. And I think for them to get better, or to realize that it's actually a problem that needs to get out there more, which is, so far, parts supply has been pretty much non-existent, which is very sad. I think we're getting there. I think, I've had several conversations with Pinned about, parts distribution, being able to get stuff, but so far I've been waiting on parts for months, and that's kind of been a recurring theme of trying to get stuff from them. Has been kind of a huge pain. I don't know what the holdup is necessarily. I feel like I'm not getting the full story from them. And that's sometimes the case with these importers / distributors, is you do have to be patient as they start up. This is kind of the first year that Arctic Leopard has really started, so I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, but I also have to be honest. Some of my customers have been frustrated about getting parts, shipping timelines on some things. That's in my opinion, that really needs to be their concentration right now for this brand to super grow. And for me to fully endorse the brand, we really need a good steady stream of replacement parts. Another downside, which we touched on already a little bit, which is the front forks. The forks do need to be improved, so I think I'm not going to hit that too hard again, but there's some improvement to be done with those. They're very usable though, and they're far from the worst of any of the bikes that I've ever ridden, from both gas and electrics alike, so they're very usable. I think until a better option kind of comes around, which I hear is in the works, so that's a good thing to know. Let's see. As far as downsides go, the only real other one is I wish there was a more dedicated app like the EX880. Far Driver can absolutely be used, and Far Driver is very usable, but you do have to kind of learn Far Driver, and you have to be careful with Far Driver because you can kind of screw stuff up through there. So I wish there was a from Arctic Leopard app for the controller. That would be really kind of icing on the cake for me. There were, something with a lot less, because the EX880's app's pretty phenomenal for a lot of our settings and how it works. I've been very happy with that. So something like that for the EX800, I think, would be sweet. I'm gonna rally for that as best I can. The only other major issue that I have encountered with the Arctic Leopard so far was the handlebar clamp situation I've had come loose. And that could have been us. I just feel like they need to go to a traditional handlebar clamp down mount versus the trials style that they have on there. I had the bars slip and I smashed myself pretty good in the chest with the bike. So yeah, make sure you tighten those down pretty tight. That was my only other real problem I had with the bike. Initially in our early generation EX800, that's our current rental / we've been using it to race, is the original shock came and it was like an oversight that the rear tire would rub on the shock. And that's been, well, you know, the shock itself wasn't really that bad, but it was definitely hitting the shock through its travel. And not everybody had the problem. This one definitely did. And they did replace the shock with a side mount canister that moved it out of the way. They fixed that whole situation. So I'll give props to Arctic Leopard for that. That was taken care of, and taken care of relatively quickly with just our schedule for going out to races and riding and stuff. It took us a little while to get that on there. The new bikes, though, been pretty happy with those. Yeah, and I came up with one more, which is the overheat situation. So we had the bike sitting in the sun, which I know it's not probably the greatest thing to do, and it was like Tennessee heat. So, but we've had one other customer who bought one kind of say the same thing, that they left their bike out in the sun and it caused an over temperature warning on the motor, not the controller, the motor. And that's just from sitting in the sun. And I don't know, it's probably, my guess is because the sensor is sitting somewhere too close to the exterior casing of the motor, because obviously the internal of the motor sitting in the sun is probably not getting too hot to run. But it did cut power on the bike, and they did have to like set it in the shade and whatnot, and that's pretty inconvenient. I haven't encountered that on any of the other e-motos that we've ridden, and yeah, we leave them in the sun when we're riding and stuff. So I'm not sure if that's something they could fix with software or another kind of item. But yeah, that was the only other thing that I can think of off the top of my head. So there's that. But overall, all the issues are pretty minor. These are first year bikes, and they're learning and getting production down, figuring out shipping to the United States has been an up and down process for us. They're finally coming in crates, which is exciting. So as a dealer, my perspective towards the Arctic Leopard is very positive. I think they've had a little harder, slower rollout because the crowd that they're targeting is real dirt bikers, and we are, we're a pain in the ass. We want what we want. We want a good suspension. We want good power, but we want refinement too, especially for when you're spending $8,000-9,000 on these bikes. Yeah, you definitely need more refinement, and that's where Arctic Leopard is at, and I think that's what they're doing. The EX880 I think is really getting there. The EX800 I think is getting there too. So as they're fighting through this market with everything, I think the Arctic Leopard is going to continue to grow. I really hope they stick around because, yeah, I mean, as far as competitors to the Starkvark, there's not a whole lot, and this is definitely not to hijack the EX800, but the EX880 is a great competitor to the Varg, and the EX800 is the ultimate I wanted an Ultra B, but it needs to have more power and range. That's really what it is. And especially at $8,000 now, it's a no freaking brainer for the size of the battery, for the upgrades. In my opinion, the Ultra B has just been left behind in the dust by the entirety of Arctic Leopard there. And more people need to kind of look at it as that. You get so many good upgrades, and it's such a good bike. So, and there's more support coming for it, and I think the distributor is getting there too. But in conclusion, I hope you guys really enjoyed watching this. I hope this helped you make a decision at looking at the Arctic Leopard. They're not perfect, but hey, there's no brand that is. We do our best to work with customers, get parts out to people, but ultimately, I'm not the manufacturer or distributor, so we try to protect that as much as we can. And you know what? I think we're only going to get better if we call out the distributor and other people for things that we want. But thanks for watching, guys. We'll catch you on the next one. Ferret Face out.